Alright guys, so now that we've gotten our base texture of our donut, and we could have actually done the whole thing because we're going to put frosting on top. So you don't have to just stop, you could actually just do the whole thing. But now that we've got this down and we're covering up all the nice little cakey parts, we need to think about the frosting that we actually sculpted out. So to do this, we have a cake texture that we laid out here. And what I want to do is I want to add another layer, and I'll just call this one frosting, and let's just make this a 1K texture. And what I would do with this is I can either fill the entire layer and then hide where I don't want it, or I could just paint it in myself. So if I want to paint it in, I go to the paintbrush, make sure the stamp is turned off. I change the color to whatever I want. So if we wanted a strawberry or if we wanted a chocolate. And if you're going to do a chocolate, remember that chocolate isn't black. It's more of a dark brown. So it looks a little bit weird if you try to just paint it pure black. Not as appetizing. So just a dark brown. But let's say we love strawberries and we're going to pick like a nice little pink to do that with. So I'd hit OK, and if I started to paint, hold down the letter M as in Mary and crank up the intensity, and if it's not playing ball, we just crank it up to 100, and then you can see I can paint that in. The stamp spacing is why it's kind of sputtering, so I'm just going to drop that down or just turn it off, and now you'll see it. Whoa, now it's nice and smooth. Now, so I can go in, I could paint this out, and then when I get close to the end, I just would tighten up the brush, the letter B and left mouse button, and then just go around and make sure it's there. So that's one way of doing it, and then I just, would paint that, and then if I go, oops, I've accidentally covered that up, I don't want to hit control because it's just going to be a negative. I would actually have to use basically an erase to actually go in. Now, the interesting thing with this is there's something else I can do. So if I go to the paint erase, I could go, oh, I don't want it there. And then I just go back to the brush and then start painting that in. Another thing I can do is on that frosting layer is I can actually go in and scroll down and just say flood. So if I have that layer and I just say, oh, flood. And you notice, here's the interesting thing. Sometimes, depending on the brush, it'll say flood or flood from camera. So if I look straight down, let's go to a top view, and I just say, okay, flood from camera. And that is actually pretty darn close. And now I just have to do cleanup. Now obviously that works great for this particular model, but if I had something more complicated, that wouldn't really work as well. And depending on what tool you're using and what's going on, you could have the option of just a flood that would just flood the entire model with that texture. Now, if I decide like I want to do cleanup afterwards, or if I did flood the whole thing and I just went over it and said, all right, I'm just going to flood it. I don't care if it's a little messy because I'm going to clean it up in a second. Just get that frosting, and if it's on the cake. Now, this is frosting, so, it's not going to be flush like that, but you might have a little bit of dripping and stuff, a little bit of kind of coming down or something. Even more so than just the bigger areas. But you don't want it to look like you just, well, what it is right now, which is us just painting it on. So if I get all that and say, oops, we missed this, and just kind of scroll around in there, get that, Make sure the frosting is taken care of. So that's all lovely, but now it's kind of messy. But I don't want to go back and forth between tools. I can mask out. So in other words, if I'd like, let's say I just did it and it's like this. And the non-destructive way of doing it is you right click on that frosting layer, and then you say that you want to, oh, that's right, that's in here, too many programs. With that frosting layer, I click here just to add a mask. And now I have the mask selected. And what will happen is, depending on the color I use, so if I say black, it's going to hide. If I say white, it's going to show. Because it's all the paint is still there, I'm just hiding it or showing it. So I'm going to pick black. And now I'll just use this to do my cleanup. So there's a few ways of doing this. You know, there's not a like perfect one way. And if I go, oops, I just undo, and let me just get a little close in there. See? And now I can just have a little bit more control. And if I'm being really anal, I'll just tighten up that brush and get in there close so it has a nice edge to it. And I use the model, the sculpting that I put in as the guide of where that frosting should be. Typically, I want to start painting after I'm done subdividing and doing extra details, because those extra details might change if I start sculpting it more or subdividing it more. So it's a process. If I want to do a straight line, I click, let go. So that's left mouse click, wherever I want. Let go, hold down Shift, and then it should do a straight line. It's being a little bit weird right now, but oh, interesting. It's just being a little bit weird. We'll go over that later. If I decide, oops, I went too far, hold down Control, and that inverts the black and white so I can paint it back in. And it's okay if there's a little bit of schmutz here and there, like a little bit of frosting that kind of spilled out or is on it in some spots. That would actually make a little bit of sense. And you basically just do your cleanup. Now I'm rushing it for the sake of the demo, but when you take your time, you get a lot more control and you can do a lot more stuff. So I think I'll leave a little bit of pink here and there just so that I can get a little bit of frosting that might have smudged or stuff in some places, and then just tighten up some areas. So you get the idea. I'm not gonna take forever on this. I'm just gonna do a quick deal here. That's looking good. That's looking good. Nice. And then of course I would not forget the interior either. So I have to kind of go around and do this area as well to get the best look and the cleanest look that I want. And the cleaner I get it, the better it'll look. And we're just masking. Paint, the frosting is still there, we're just hiding it. There we go. Nice. So now that we've got this, the next phase will be adding some little extra details and then rendering it.